I got a package from Enos at Tangent Engineering the other day. It's a 5-inch sine bar for the lathe and a vice mate to use the sine bar on, with a vice on the milling machine or whatever. So really cool. Alright, so let's see how this sine bar works. So, very nice packaging. Nice job, Jim. Very professional, very high quality. Comes with a bunch of reference charts to give you the number of gauge blocks, that the depth you need to build up to get various angles for various things. So, for example, there's Morse tapers here. If I wanted to cut a number 2 Morse taper, you can see that with the 5-inch sine bar, I need to build up a 0.12483 and put the sine bar on and indicate off of that until it's right, and then that's the perfect angle to cut a Morse taper to. So, very nice packaging. Here's the sine bar itself. This is the 5-inch model. I believe he makes 4, 5, and 6. So I'm just going to use the vice mate box here to kind of illustrate how this works. So if you imagine this is the flat top part of the compound, you may have a tool post sitting right here. What you do is you put the sine bar on it, and then, as I said, you under one side build up with gauge blocks or whatever the best way you have of doing that is, and then set your angle such that as when this moves, you indicate off of this, and when it's at 0, then you know you've got the right angle set on your compound. So let's see how this works with my compound. I took it off the lathe because right now I have a solid tool post mount on it. So how is this going to work? There is no flat square part on this to indicate off of. Well, I guess we're going to have to make an adapter. So what I'm thinking is I'm going to take a piece of steel, machine it so that it references off of the T-slot. It'll clamp down to a T-nut, and it'll cover basically this entire area here. So that it gives me something flat and square to reference off of. So this compound, my lathe, is an old Clausing Model 100 from the 1940s, which eventually was bought by Atlas, and as you know, they turned a lot of stuff out for Craftsman, etc. So this applies to any of those types of lathes, or the South Bends, or any of the lathes that have this style of compound. So the first thing I'm going to do is, I hope that this edge here is 90 degrees perfectly to the travel of the compound. So the first thing I'm going to do is verify that. So I'm going to set this up on the mill, because I'm going to do all the machining for this plate, well, most of the machining for this plate on the mill. I'm probably going to do some on the shaper, the cleanup stuff. And we'll indicate off of this edge to make sure we're perfectly square on the mill table, and then we'll use the lathe the compound screw, I'll put a machinist square in here and hold it somehow, and then use the screw on the compound to move it with another indicator to verify that it truly is 90 degrees. So let's set that up and take a look at it. Okay, so I've got an indicator set up, and I'm going to sweep it across this face and get this compound lined up. Alright, so I've got the compound set parallel to the x-axis, y-axis, set parallel to the y-axis. I've got a square secured in the T-slot, and now I'm going to use the compound itself, and let's see if the T-slot is square to the compound screw. Alright, that's not great. Let's see what we get if I just move the mill table. That's amazing that this thing is that dialed in. I've got a dial indicator indicating off of the back edge of the table on a mag base that's attached to the top of the compound, which you can't see in the picture here, but trust me, it is. And as I wind the compound in, you'll see that it's pretty darn close. Okay, I think we've got it. So at this point, I know that the travel of the compound is parallel with the table, with the mill. So now I'm going to indicate off of this edge to see how far off it is. And I think what I'm going to do, it's pretty worn, pretty beat up, so it appears that it's worn more on the ends. So I think what I'm going to do is, I'm assuming it's not going to be too square, so I'm just going to hit it lightly with an end mill and square it up and clean it up a little bit. I don't want to take too much off, maybe a thou or two. Okay, so the objective here isn't to try to get it square. We already know it's square. The screw is square and travel is square to the mill, parallel to the mill. So we're just going to sweep this across and see how much out of square the T-slot is. This is a tenths indicator. The other indicator was a thou indicator. 3 thou, 4 thou, 5, 5.5, 6, 7, and at the end it finally drops off. It's about 4 thou off over that. So I'm going to just touch it up with an end mill, and we know it's square, so it doesn't really affect anything in normal operation of the lathe because the tool post rotates anyway. But for the purposes of setting the angle with the sine bar, the sine plate, then it needs to be, if I'm going to use this as a reference edge, it needs to be square. So I'm going to set that up and clean that up. Alright, so I've got a carbide end mill in here. I've got my x-axis touched off and zeroed in the center where it's highest. So I'm going to take it back down to 0 and just run it across just to see if we're hitting anything there. Lock the table. Yeah, that got it. Alright, so I've got this piece of steel that I cleaned up on the shaper. It's hot rolled, so it was had a big thick coating, nasty coating of scale, mill scale on it. And I really like the way the shaper gets rid of that mill scale. So I ran it through the shaper on the 4 sides anyway and squared those up and got rid of the mill scale. So now I'm going to mount it in the vise on some parallels and then clean up the ends, and I think I'm going to use the fly cutter and redo these surfaces so that I have a really nice smooth surface. I might not touch these edges. I resharpened my shaper tool in between this, and the difference is dramatic. This is much smoother and nicer than this. So I'll get this set up in the mill vise and clean these edges up and probably do the other surface there. Okay, so I've got an end mill mounted in an end mill holder, and I'm going to touch off on this end and clean that up. So one of the things I just wanted to mention real quick is, I don't know how many of you have paid attention or not, but this is a Precision Matthews PM727V, and one of the reasons I bought this mill is because not only of the quality seemed to be rated higher among people who had looked at various brands, but also because of the reputation that Precision Matthews has for customer service. And there's been a bit of a delay in my progress on making this adapter plate for the sine bar because my mill broke. And I have to say that Precision Matthews support was top-notch. I cannot express how pleased I am with their support. They helped me diagnose the problem. It was still under warranty, and so they promptly shipped out a new part to fix it. It turned out to be the control board. It was doing something where it was causing the motor to not engage. It was just like jerky and stopped, and so they rushed out a new control board for it. I put that in, and everything is working great. So yeah, so kudos to Precision Matthews, and I have to say, if anybody is looking to get a new mill or a new lathe, you certainly cannot go wrong with Precision Matthews and their customer support. So anyway, enough said on that. I just wanted to bring that up. So I'm going to finish up the other side of the adapter plate. This finish looks beautiful, and then I'll fly cut the top, and we'll get to work on the parts that actually matter. There's very few dimensions on this part that are important, and primarily the only one is we're going to mill a raised section across here that is the same width as that fits nicely in my T-slot on my compound, and that'll be used to register the adapter plate on the compound, and then we'll have a hole drilled through it to allow for a bolt to or a screw to tighten it down, and that's really about all there is to this part. So I'll finish that up and then bring you back when I'm cutting the raised portion there. Not sure what that's called. If somebody knows what that profile should be called, let me know, because it's not a groove. It's a raised part. So anyway. So I was getting ready to mount the fly cutter in the mill to do the top surface of that sine bar plate, and was looking at the insert, and I thought, maybe I should change that, but I wanted to go look at it first, and I'm really liking this little digital microscope. It just makes it so much easier. You can clearly see how chowdered up that edge is. That's the one that I had been using, and flip it around here. A little dirty there on the end, but you can see, let me see if I can get that off. That's the side that was in. There, so that's a new side. So if I recall right, I think this digital microscope was like 30 or 40 bucks or something like that on Amazon. And now that I've got it out, I've got a metrology station and I'm using it, it's great. Highly recommended. So anyway, I'm going to flip the insert around and we'll use a brand new side and see how that finish looks. Yep, this steel leaves a bit to be desired on surface finish. Oh well, it'll work. I switched over to using anchor lube after the first couple passes, and that made a dramatic difference in the finish on the surface. And I got to tell you, I'm glad I did, because it was the first time that I'd actually tried anchor lube. I've had it around for a while, and now I'm sold on it. So, going to be going through a few bottles of this stuff. All right, so I finished milling both sides of this. I've got my raised area here, whatever that's called, and I'm just going to check and make sure I used the digital readout on the quill to get the depth, and I just want to use a depth gauge and verify that it is correct on both sides, because obviously I've had to take it out and replace the inserts and all sorts of stuff like that. So start off by zeroing out my depth gauge. You can see it's zeroed out. So now I'm going to take a reading on this side. What does that say? 1.1905. Here, 0.1915. Okay, on the inside here. Oops, hitting that bar there. 0.1915, right on. And here, 0.10, teetering on 5. So I think that is pretty darn good. The only part that really matters is this edge right along here, which is going to sit on top of the compound T-slot. And this should fit snugly, not tight, but snugly, in the... Get a little bit more deburring to do on that inside edge. It's good on the top, just a little bit right there. Anyway, should fit snugly in the T-slot. Okay, so I've got the part all deburred. Edges are not going to cut me up anymore, and I should be able to get reliable measurements on this. I checked the fit on the compound, and it fits very well. So now I need to find the center of this raised portion, and then I will drill a hole for the bolt to secure it, and then we'll flip it over and counterbore it, and then we'll make a T-nut. Alright, let's come over to the hardware drawer here and see what I've got in a way of Allen head cap screws to fit. Something fairly large. Looks like 3/8, that'll do. And 1 inch will probably be good, but I've got a 1 1/2 here, looks like, if I need it. That's the largest I've got, is 3/8, it appears. I think the 1 inch will do. Go check it for length and see if that'll work. Alright, I've got a spotting drill set up in the chuck, so let's spot it. And now we'll drill through with 25/64. Alright, I'm just going to deburr this with my little Ryobi handheld screwdriver. I use these Vera, W-E-R-A, chamfering bits. It's a nice little kit. Comes with an assortment of different sizes and a handle and an adapter to use in something like this. So really like it. It's very handy. I just keep this in here and keep it in my drawer in the lathe or in the mill. Looks like it's time to charge it. There we go. Pretty nice. Alright, now let's see about setting it up and counterboring this side. Alright, so I've got a 3/8 inch reamer in here. I'm going to lower it down and set the DRO to 0 where it touches the surface. And then I need to counterbore it down to 0.3875, I believe. Oh yeah, I like it. Okay. So now, other than chamfering and bluing, this part is done. Alright, so let's see how the sine bar from Tangent Engineering works on these old style lathes with cast compounds. Now, as you can see, there's no way to mount this, so that's why we just spent all that time making that adapter plate. The adapter plate fits right on the compound in the T-slot and is machined for a tight fit, not super tight, but precise enough that it doesn't wiggle around on the in the T-slot. I used an Allen cap screw. You could use alternatively a countersunk screw to center it up, but this works just fine. So now that gives us a surface to mount the sine bar to. And then we indicate off of this side here. So as you can see, what would happen is you will put your gauge blocks in here to set the distance. This is a 5-inch sine bar, and then turn it and put an indicator in so that as you move the compound, it stays at 0, and then you'll have the angle that you want. And Jim includes these really nice reference charts. So for example, if I want to make a Morse taper 2 with a 5-inch sine bar, I need a stack of gauge blocks that is 0.12483. So first thing we're going to do is check to make sure my sine bar adapter plate is square or is parallel to the travel of the screw. So I'm going to set up an indicator first of all, just using the carriage to set the compound square or parallel to the carriage movement. Then once that's done, I can use the screw on the compound and verify that it is also parallel. So I'll get an indicator set up and be right back. Okay, so I've got an indicator set up here, and I'm going to crank the compound or the carriage right now. I'm going to move the carriage, and you'll see that the indicator is moving just a hair, not even a half a thou. Now I'm going to use the screw, I'm going to use the screw on the compound no movement on the indicator. Maybe a little, around a thou maybe, if yeah, at the far extreme a thou. So I'm pretty happy with that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put the sine bar on, and we're going to set it to cut a Morse taper 2. Okay, so now I've got the gauge block in, the sine block bar on the adapter plate, and from my angle the dial indicator is zeroed out, or at least close enough. So we'll move the carriage, and it looks like we're a little off. We're getting closer as we go towards the front. Falling off just a little bit. Let's put it about right there and zero it out again. Oops. Alright, it looks like we're about a thou off, 0 there, and a thou off, 0 there. So now it should be set. Alright, so I've got a piece of 12L14 chucked up here. Let's make sure it's running true. Looks pretty good. Yeah, nice. All right, let's face off this end. Okie dokie. Alright, I don't know how many of you caught that, but when I set the angle on the compound, I set it such that it would have been cutting like this. So I had to redo it so that it's cutting like this. So I think that is fixed. So let's redo it. Let's give it a shot now, I mean. Alright, got that zeroed out. Come in here and zero that out. Come in and take shut off the air compressor. Another 10 thou. I realize I've got a lot of stick out there, but this is just a practice run. It's clearly cutting a taper. Okay. A little rough, but let's see how it fits. Sorry, battery died. But yeah, as you can see, it's perfectly usable on an older style lathe with the cast compound just by making a simple adapter plate. So, alrighty, take care.